Well, folks, as you see to my right, we have a very special guest on today's episode of Locked On Pirates. It's Jason Mackey. He's going to share his time at the winter meetings, talk about the Pirates' moves thus far, and what they could do moving forward on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alrighty, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me right there on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And most of the time when I have stuff to talk about, it's because of this gentleman to my right, Jason Mackey, who breaks a lot of news for the Pittsburgh Pirates over at Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Jason obviously was at winter meetings, boots on the ground in Nashville, Tennessee, seeing everything up close. But Jason, I imagine it's nice to be back in your humble abode today after a very busy week.
Yeah, I was ready to go. Not be, obviously I missed my family and that sort of thing, and it's nice to be home. But as we were talking about off air, I like Nashville. I really love Nashville. I think it's a great city. I don't mind covering the winter meetings, but the winter meetings in Nashville, no thank you. It was at this giant Gaylord Opryland Resort and Convention Center. A few of us were calling it the Biodome. Like, it's just this big, gigantic dome, and they don't want you to go outside, and they want you to spend all of your money in their lavish place. So I don't know. That's not quite my style. I like going outside. I don't want to spend twice as much as I should have to on things. So, yeah, I'm glad to be home.
Most of the pictures I also saw from the building, too, all I could keep thinking about was Glass Onion from Knives Out. That's like all I could keep thinking about the entire time that I saw pictures of it. But obviously at winter meetings, lots happened as expected for the Pittsburgh Pirates and across all of baseball. Obviously, the Pirates make a trade with the Atlanta Braves for Marco Gonzalez. They pick up some guys in the minor league Rule 5 draft, including Seth Beer. For you being there and kind of having more insider information on it, how did you feel about the Marco Gonzalez move? Because everybody heard my thoughts yesterday, but I feel like they might want to hear yours as well on how you feel about Marco Gonzalez being a Pittsburgh Pirate and what he brings to this team moving into next year.
I like it a lot. I haven't made any bones about. I mean, the risk they're taking here is so minimal. We're talking about a team that has one starting pitcher, is obviously financially, conservative. We'll say it that way. I don't want that to be the focal point. And you've got a left-hander with established credibility and track record for $3 million. And it's the type of pitcher that you've done well with in the past. Like, Marco Gonzalez is basically Tyler Anderson and Jose Quintana. And the Pirates have helped those guys well. They've really looked into his medical stuff. I understand the elbow, the forearm. Anytime you're talking about that part of the body, that's going to be a concern. Completely fair. My understanding of the Pirates' depth of that stuff is very good. Looking at his medical records, talking to people who have seen him, that sort of deal. I think the Braves are probably fairly open and willing and wanting to do that. And he's also working out at Driveline, where you get a bunch of live data from him out there. Oscar Marin has a history with him. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that makes sense for me with this signing. The only thing I've been saying and I feel about this is, like, it can't be it. It's not like you signed Marco Gonzalez and, like, that's going to be the savior. And I don't think that is. Like, Ben Cherington talked as recently as yesterday about, we still want to keep going. We want more. We want better, that sort of stuff. And, he's rotation depth. They needed rotation depth. He's a much better left-hander than, say, Bailey Falter. But I do hope and think that they have at least one more move in the tank.
Yeah, and I would say that is where I was too, is when I was thinking about where he would slot in this rotation. Ideally, you'd want him to be kind of more on the back end. I would say 4 or 5 guy that's going to eat you up about 4 to 6 innings to start. And that's who he's going to be. He's not going to be a guy that's going to give you that crazy 8-inning shutout start. He's not going to be any of that. And he's going to be very familiar, I think, Jason, to what people have seen. Like you mentioned with Tyler Anderson and Jose Quintana, he's going to be a very familiar pitcher to those guys too. He's a soft-throwing lefty. He's going to allow a good amount of contact with good ground ball rates from everything that I've seen. He's going to occasionally strike out 5 to 6 batters a start. And honestly, when you look in another framework of this that I really looked at, is a lot of people I think also forgot that Mike Burrows and JT Brubaker, and then you're looking at the Jared Joneses and the Paul Skeens of the world that could be available later in the season.
Right.
If you have a guy like Marco Gonzalez eating up innings until that point, and then if you're in a good position, you could still use him if you want to, or move on from him and at least get something out of it. I think that's just a win-win overall for the entire situation.
Same. And if you wanted to keep him, I mean, let's say they want to get crazy and pick up his option for next year. I mean, they could. The Pirates are going to pick up a $15 million option. I find that hard to believe, but it is there. And like you're saying, I mean, this is something that Cherington talked about. It's very obvious with their rotation. It's front-loaded. That's where they need to fill the innings. If they can get to mid-season, like, you know, maybe they bring Velasquez back and he's around. I don't know. It's probably a long shot, but it's still there. Skeens, Jones, Chandler, Solomedo, I don't know. You know, maybe it takes a little bit for Priester, Ortiz, Contreras to figure it out. I mean, they've got some balls in the air. They need some certainty at the beginning of the season. And to me, that's what Gonzalez gives you. I realize people are going to say, oh, well, he's coming off an elbow injury and there's no certain. It's the same way with any pitcher, man. Like you're gonna inherit some level of risk. And, you know, he's done a very good job throughout his career of taking the ball, of logging innings. I think he can be really good. I mean, that's something we looked at Tyler Anderson when they got him, say like, oh, here's the soft tossing lefty that's not going to do a lot. Well, you know, all of a sudden his fastball execution got a heck of a lot better. He spun it a little bit more in Pittsburgh. His changeup was very good, which is another thing with Gonzalez. Like, this is an elite changeup. If they're able to put that all together, why can't it work?
Yeah, and I also like dabbled into his StatCast stuff. Now, I know it was hard in 2023 to really gauge anything that he really did, seeing as he only pitched 50 innings. But you looked at all the velocities of his pitches compared to 2022, which is 2022. If they get the 2022 Marco Gonzalez, I think fans will be very happy with that, just off of just a baseline of looking at his statistics. But all of his velocities were up. Although, again, he only pitched 50 innings, so you have to wonder how that would have changed over the course of a full season. But I would also argue, again, what you're arguing, that you're saying, hey, the Pirates in this regime have a track record of picking up the soft toss lefty and turning him into something that not a lot of people really thought they would be. I mean, Tyler Anderson, for instance, gets a 3-year, $39 million extension in free agency after his time in Pittsburgh and eventually being traded. Same thing with Jose Quintana. He became a hot commodity on the free agent market afterwards. There's a real shot that Marco Gonzalez could become that kind of player as well, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what the former regime did for a while. You know, they generated rave reviews for how they would be able to take pitchers and fix them, and you need to be able to do that. And, you know, they kind of ran out of magic. Obviously, I think that's why that changes were made, but I'm willing to hear them out, man. Like, you got a soft tossing veteran lefty with recent track record of performance. You're saying you're going to fix him and you got it for $3 million. Like, I don't see what there is to be mad about. Now, I know the fan base and I understand people wanting to be upset or see certain things or whatever. And I never want to discount that, but like, this move is good. Objectively, this is a good move right now. It just can't be the only one. The other point I'll make, Ethan, is like, I like his spin stuff. I'm intrigued by it. He threw a slider, but hasn't in a number of years. I think like 2014 might be his last one, but also throws a cutter. That's a mold that the Pirates have played with too. Like that line between a cutter and a slider. They like to have guys throw a slider, complementing changeups. I mean, there's just different places you can go. He's got a real good curveball, obviously knows how to spin it. Like, there's some stuff you can play with Gonzalez that I don't feel like he's a finished product. And if he's executing his fastball, it's going to open up the door to a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And we know that Marco Gonzalez is a given move. We know that that's happened. That's done. The only thing we really don't know, and I don't know if it's been released yet, but the player to be named later. But folks, I can promise you, it's not going to be anybody that you're going to really cringe over losing, I don't think. And I've seen the jokes too about it being Paul Skeens. It's not Paul Skeens. It's fine, guys. We'll be fine. But right after this break, we're going to talk about some things that the Pirates might do, because obviously I think me and Jason are on the same accord here that they still have work to do. But before we do that, folks, we're going to talk about FanDuel. Many of you know tonight, and I'm going to go a little off script with this, that there is a certain over-under total that is the lowest it's been in an NFL game for nearly 30 years. And that involves the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots. Tonight on Thursday Night Football, the second Thursday night game of the season for the Steelers. And if you think that under total is going to hit, folks, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. So realistically, if you're a new customer and you think the Steelers can beat the Patriots, which, I mean, they should, but who knows, that's $150 for you if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, same-game parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, because FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And you may see my mug again somewhere, because Locked On Sports Today has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And welcome to segment 2 of this wonderful episode of Locked On Pirates here on Thursday, December 7th. Again, Pittsburgh Steelers play tonight. So nice little pregame Pirates talk for you, because at least the Pirates are on the offensive, unlike the two teams that are playing tonight, finally making a move at winter meetings. And the one thing you probably heard me and Jason say a lot in that first segment is this cannot be it. And that is just clear cut and to the point. Marco Gonzalez cannot be the only signing you make. And I know a lot of people saw Eduardo Rodriguez go off the board. There's a lot of people that really wanted him in Pittsburgh. I think the price tag was just a little too high based off of what he signed in Arizona. But there's still a lot of very good, valuable pitching available, Jason, that I think a lot of people might be missing. And it's not necessarily the household names that you would be used to, but it's guys that are going to come in here and give this rotation a bit of a spark behind Mitch Keller. And one of the guys that I've continually mentioned that I would love to be a Pittsburgh Pirate is Martin Perez from the Texas Rangers, who has been a free agent. Not really a lot surrounding him right now in terms of rumors that I've heard, but kind of got buried in that rotation after the acquisitions of Scherzer, DeGrom, Eovaldi, etc. And I know you got one lefty already, but why not two? I like Perez a lot. And it would be kind of similar to the Marco Gonzalez thing, where you're hoping that he can bring back his 2022 form when he was nearly a Cy Young candidate that year. That was Perez, by the way, not Gonzalez. But what do you think the Pirates are going to target moving forward, and what range do you feel like they're going to do so?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. I will say this, that I think it's going to be more trade than free agents. That's sort of the vibe that I'm getting from them. And I'm going down the list of free agent pitchers available. If you've got 0.8 WAR Luis Severino getting $13 million or whatever, that very possibly is going to box the Pirates out of a lot of things. So you're going to have to get non-traditional, unconventional, whatever you want to say. I'm not great with just picking random candidates. Although Quintana intrigues me. There's a lot out there. There really is. I don't know if I could pick. I still think, and this is, I'm sort of contradicting myself, but my number one has been Jack Flaherty. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to spend money anywhere this offseason, if you told me they could make one more move and it can be within reason, I'm going Flaherty. I think that is a piece of the rotation. I'd be fine if they didn't spend a lot of money at first base. I'd be fine if they got Eric Hosmer and just created a platoon. I don't care if they add to the bullpen. That to me is a pitcher that I see. He screams he needs somebody to give him opportunity and to help him. So anyway, if I'm going to throw a dart at trade candidates, I'm not sure if I see anything there. I mean, there's some guys out there that make sense for them too, like Manaea, Montas. There are other names that I've listed and sort of flirted with, and we can pick a lot of names, but
It's very hard too, because you don't know really what's going on in the minds of the front office. You can sit there and go, hey, Frankie Montas would be great, or this guy would be great, but they're also not thinking like that either. They're taking a look probably at every single available player that they think they can go and get. And when you say more trades versus free agency, that's kind of the mode that I wanted them to go anyway. Just because you look at what you have in the farm system right now, you have an abundance of pitching in the farm system. The top half of it is pretty much all pitching. But you also have an abundance of players at specific positions. One that's talked about a lot is second base, with Ji-hwan Bae, Triolo, Gonzalez, and Peguero all potentially vying for that one spot. And a lot of people have flirted with the idea of, hey, we have an abundance at this position. Why not use that abundance of a position to go out and get something that we need, like a starting pitcher or a adequate first baseman? Now, trading wise, I would like them to kind of stay where they were with the Marco Gonzalez thing. And those are the trades that I love. Trades where you're practically giving up nothing. You're actually talking with a team to obtain some of his salary, and you're getting a known commodity. That's why I still think that's one of the best things that they could have done. And they could still do that again with another type of player, I think.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's a lot of moving pieces to this, right? Like, we can look at trade candidates behind the plate. We could look at trade candidates at second base. And I think there's a lot. I mean, would anybody be that upset if the Pirates fixed their pitching problems with somebody significant, but had to give up like Endy or Henry to get it? And let's say Peguero or Gonzalez? Like, probably not. I wouldn't be personally. Like, I'm going to hedge bets that somebody figures it out there. I liked enough of what I saw out of Jared Triolo. This is a little bit of a different conversation, but to consider him in the mix somehow, somewhere, it's going to be a little bit of second base, could be a little bit of first base, could be a little bit of the outfield. But I mean, you've got some places to positions of strength from which to trade. And so I look at that and think, okay, if you can get a pitcher who costs less by giving up a few prospects, great. I don't know how the infield logjam is going to ultimately sort itself out. I'm obviously not going to remove O'Neal Cruz from shortstop. I think the future at second base is still going to be Tamar Johnson. I want to open up runway for him to play, although, like, Gonzalez, Peguero, Bae, Triolo, like, you want those guys to play now, right? Like, I'm not going to force feed Tamar to come up here and try to get him to contribute at the major leagues. Like, let's hear what they have to say, see what they can do. Another side note, I'd probably move Bae to center. I'm curious to see whether they'll do that. But I mean, again, we're talking about bundling assets for return, and I think that's completely reasonable. I think another discussion, another thing, I brought this up a little bit earlier, do you spend dollars on pitching? Do you spend dollars on first base? Like, what are you doing with that money? And I've sort of talked myself out of doing anything at first base, seeing some of these numbers, and again, different subject, but you're seeing Candelario get $45 million over 3 years. Like, man, no way. Absolutely not. They can handle that with a platoon just fine.
Yeah, and I saw that deal for Candelario, and there's like a million different things that go into that for the Cincinnati Reds. Go to Locked On Reds and just listen to that, because Jeff already reached out to about it and said that it gave them 7-8 different things to talk about, just because of all the things they have going on over there with Encarnacion Strand, and Jonathan India is probably as good as gone at this point with that move. And that's where I also urge fans of this podcast and people who listen to this and follow the Pirates well, is remember about a month and a half ago that I said it's not all about the money. It's not about how much money they spend. It's how they spend it and how they do things. And that's where I think the trade aspect of these things would work. And one of the things that intrigued me reports-wise is that the Marlins were interested in moving a lot of this young pitching. And you were saying, hey, I wouldn't be that upset if they moved Henry Davis and Nick Gonzalez or somebody like that for a Braxton Garrett or an Edward Cabrera, for instance. That's just a hypothetical, but you would also be ensuring that you get a very young pitcher with years of control that's not going to be expensive for you at all, that also gives you flexibility down the line. Because if there's one thing that's true, and Jason, I'm sure you'll agree with this, with teams that financially restrict themselves from spending this much money like the Pirates do, they need a lot of pitching, because you can never have enough pitching when it comes to the Pittsburgh Pirates or any team that really doesn't spend the money like the big markets.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't it's not exclusive to small markets, in my opinion. No. I mean, you just can never have enough pitching. And, I just think it's a discussion. It's a scary discussion, frankly, when you talk about Tommy John surgery and injuries and all that stuff. But I think the Pirates, by and large, at the lower levels of the minor leagues, I like what they have. I like the options they've obtained. I like what's coming down the pike. It's just there's a bit of a dip here. And there's a bit of a dip, one, with guys at the major league level, getting them back from injury. And there's also a dip just between what they currently have and some of the prospects, as I mentioned. Chandler, I'd fully expect to start at Double-A. I don't think he got enough there to really advance, and that's fine. I'm not rushing Bubba. If Solomedo starts at Triple-A, that's fine. But I want to see a little bit. There's no reason Solomedo would be up, before July. And even if he's not up in July, I still don't think that's a failure. So we're just talking about two guys, right? There's relievers, there's, maybe some multi-inning guys. You can just never have enough. I guess what we started with is the Marlins and trading from, you're able to grow up position players and maybe you can trade for pitching. I hear you. I love it. The only thing that concerns me about some of this stuff, especially when we're talking about young pitching, is other teams wanting an arm and a leg for these guys. Mm-hmm. If the Pirates had a pitching prospect that other people were calling on, and maybe they are, I don't think anybody's getting their doors knocked off for Quinn Priester. If you've got a commodity that you can dangle to other teams, you're going to want to get some stuff back here. And so the Pirates need to be careful of that. But if the Marlins are trying to, untangle something or might have some arms to spare and a need that the Pirates can solve, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and one of those needs is catching. I will say for the Miami Marlins is catching is a big deal for them. And it's funny because on Tuesday, I actually discussed it with Gary Morgan on Tuesday, that not too often do you see too many players in the league, especially at the catcher position, that can be two-way players. And I would bet that Andy Rodriguez or Henry Davis becomes one of those kind of players where he can, they either play very good, adequate defense behind the dish and also hit 250, 260 with some power and pop. What happens if you get both? That's really, I think, one of the bigger questions that you have to consider. And then do you keep both? Because one, it's going to be very expensive to keep both if they turn into those kind of players. And the King's ransom thing as well. A lot of people are, why are the Rays trading Randy Arozarena? Well, it's because they could get a King's ransom for the guy because he has 3 years of service time left and somebody's going to overpay for him at some point. I really think that. The same thing with Tyler Glasnow as well, although they're going to have to extend Tyler Glasnow, whatever team would end up getting him down the line. But I do think that's kind of the model that a lot of people and a lot of teams might start trying to do, is trade these guys when they're at their peak value and create that circle of just constant competitiveness. And the Pirates could do something like that at some point. But again, with an adequate amount of stuff in the system, I do think trades, which is where this whole conversation started, is the safer route to me. I do think that's the more safe and reasonable route rather than what we've seen some of these contracts be in free agency.
Okay, but are we saying our problem is that Andy Rodriguez and Henry Davis become too multifaceted and we have to figure out what we have there? Is that the issue or what?
I would say kind of, but I also understand that the DH position opens that up a lot now to where you can kind of bounce them back and forth. I just don't know, with them being kind of equal service time, and this is just a whole hypothetical thing, is that they both turned out to be those stud two-way catchers. Do you keep both of them or do you move one?
Here's where I'm at with that situation. And I respect your opinion, but the highest OPS of the two of them, I think, was 653.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One was theoretically unpassable behind the plate. The other one threw well, but didn't necessarily frame or block all that well in Andy. Henry Davis was an unmitigated disaster in right field. Henry did not play first base, or Andy did not play first base. I think we're a very long way away from figuring out if these guys are elite two-way performers that we have to untangle this. And at this point, I look at it and that's not a knock against those guys. People saying they're busts, that's equally as crazy. We just don't know. And so much stuff can change. I would be wanting to see them though. That's what I think I mentioned this earlier, that I don't understand about their catching situation. you want to allocate opportunity to those guys. You want to allocate, if they didn't have Jason DeLay on the roster and you were just going to go with those two, like I kind of get it. But Jason DeLay was also their best shot at catching Mitch Keller. And I think is frankly, a pretty good backup catcher. So what the heck do you do? If they were going to say, Henry Davis, you couldn't catch last year. We're not worried about this. We know you couldn't play right field either, but we're going to let you go learn right field and dedicate yourself to that. Andy, you showed enough behind them. Like if that's the route we were going with this stuff, I'd think that was completely fine. But wanting them both to catch tells me we need opportunity for these guys. We need them to play. Anyway, that's sort of just my reaction to the thought of like, oh, this is time to worry about anything. Like, no, it's just time to learn more, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's still very far away with that hypothetical that I was mentioning. I mean, this is 2-3 years down the line if both of those guys pan out. And I think that's one of the things as well for the Pittsburgh Pirates. We've heard the word competitive be thrown around, and I think this is a great place to end this, is we've thrown the word competitive around a lot. And that's what they want to do in 2024 is be a competitive baseball team, as every team should be. They should want to be a competitive baseball team. So my biggest question, and what I think we can end on this with, is you make this move for Gonzalez. Pretty known commodity, I would say. Other than so with the prospects, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Prospects are always a kind of darts that you're throwing at a dartboard, and you're going to hit some and you're not going to hit some. So why not at this point, when you say you want to be competitive, go towards that trade route that you were saying where you do more trades and get those known commodities in. So that way, when you're going into 2024 opening day, you're looking up and down the roster with minimal questions.
I mean, who's to say they're not?
Yeah.
That would be my argument. I think they are. I think that just because it hasn't landed on December 7th doesn't mean they're not trying. Yeah. And part of trying is to not make a stupid deal either. I mean, that's something I would urge people to look at. Like, I understand people want things now. That might not be the smartest thing. The smartest thing might be to wait another team out. The other team wants a stupid amount of money for something and, a stupid amount of capital, we should say, and figure like the Pirates are usually on the opposite end of this equation, right? Like they're usually the ones forced to say, how much are we going to give up? Another team might be asking, we want Skeens, we want Henry, we want Paguer, like we want all this stuff for this like established player. And the Pirates are, no, absolutely not. And you're sort of letting it go where I don't know. The Pirates to me would be in the driver's seat a little bit. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I don't want them forcing things just to make a trade. If it takes a little bit longer, fine. I think, and like I try to say that respectfully because I mean the team has 2 pitchers in its rotation right now. Like that's not enough. It's frustrating. Oviedo went down. They should have had a deeper rotation to begin with. Like all of that stuff is completely fair. They haven't done a good enough job developing young pitching. I understand. But I would just say, like, if the rotation looks like this in February, get as mad as you want. That's inexcusable. But I would you got to kind of let the situation play out. It's not necessarily Pirates inactivity. It could very well be, and again, none of us know because we never know on the outside. It could very well be, these offers right now are sucker deals. We have enough here that we feel like we can wait it out. We don't have to do this. And maybe it looks different later this month or January.
Yeah, and I think you put that perfectly it's December 7th. There's still, I can't do the math in my head, but there's still a very long time before we get to spring training and really have to worry about this. And it's gonna take time, but they're gonna be fine. And if anything, to end on a comedic note, expect a deal on Christmas Eve or Christmas because Ben
That's
Cherington
not funny,
loves holidays.
Ethan. That's not funny. That's just not. No. I'll expect the deal. You know what? I'll expect the deal on like a Steelers Sunday or playoffs or something like that.
Oh, yeah?
We did Christmas, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to.
For Jason, it's not funny because then he has to work it.
That's not the least bit funny. I remember the Josh Bell trade, man. I got a call from an editor in our office. So we got some information that they could potentially be trading Josh Bell. And the very first call I got on it, he goes, "I'm sorry, but I'm about to ruin your Christmas." I was
Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah, that was actually my first year with Locked On. was those trades that all happened. I actually jumped on at the beginning of November, was trying to figure out how to do all this. And then all this started happening. And I'm like, oh, great. I need help. So actually, no, we don't want Jason working on holidays. So do it on like Saturday against the Colts next week.
There we go.
And then
that's fine. Happily do that one. Just don't Christmas me.
No Christmas, no New Year's Day this year. We don't want Jason working on holidays. But folks, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, you can follow me right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Find this show on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you find it. Jason, anything you would like to say to the people and where they can find your stuff, even though they should already know?
Post-Gazette.com. You can find me on Twitter at JMackeyPG. You can see that on your screen. And thanks everybody for watching, for listening, for interacting, for commenting, to all that stuff, man. You guys are why I'm able to, Ethan's able to, we're all able to do what we do. So thank you very much for that.
Oh yeah, of course. And again, Ben Charrington, no trades on holidays. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday evening. Enjoy the Steelers game tonight. Go check out Locked On Steelers with Christopher Carter. I'm sure he has great stuff going on over there for tonight. But until then, we'll see you on the flip side.